All right, welcome everyone to our webinar on rising construction cost and new development. My name is Bill Greenleaf, and I manage the real estate and clean energy lending team at Virginia Community Capital. And for those of you unfamiliar with VCC, we are a statewide community development bank with a focus on workforce and affordable housing, small business, and clean energy lending. We have offices in Richmond, Christiansburg, and Norfolk. Before we get started, a few housekeeping items I want to go over. First, this meeting is being recorded, so we can use it as a resource after today. And the recording link in the survey will be emailed out next week to those that are registered. Second is we'll be using the Zoom Q&A chat function at the bottom of your screen, and which we will hold questions till the end. And let's go ahead and get started. We are delighted to be joined today by Michael Lynch with KBS General Contractor, Eric Phipps of SNP Development to explore how rising construction costs are impacting new real estate development. Michael is VP of Business Development at KBS. KBS is a 46-year-old general contractor serving Central Virginia that works on 20 to 30 projects a year. Over the past 10 years, about 70% of their work is in multifamily. Michael works directly with developers like Eric Phipps to negotiate contracts to build new apartment buildings. Our other panelist is Eric Phipps, who's a partner in SNP Development, a Richmond-based multifamily developer. Eric has over 25 years in multifamily development. In the past 3 years, Eric's company has built 2 large multifamily properties in Richmond and acquired a few more for a total of over 600 units. KBS built the last 2 multifamily projects developed by Eric's company. I'm looking forward to today's discussion because over the past 12 months, I've heard from numerous clients at VCC that construction costs are out of control. For instance, on May 3rd, the Wall Street Journal reported that lumber prices are up over 400% compared to this time last year. And on April 30th, CNBC published an article stating that soaring lumber prices are adding $12,900 to the cost of a new multifamily unit, according to the National Association of Home Builders. So in the midst of soaring lumber prices and an increase in the cost of other building supplies, how do you plan for new development? Do you plan a new project and hope prices will come back down? Or do you hope you can increase rents significantly and you wait it out? Or will construction material costs ever return to normal? And if you're a bank, how do you respond to a new loan request? We hope to address all these topics in today's discussion. All right, so now I'm going to turn to some questions I have for Eric and Michael, and we'll start ask Michael first, and we'll go to Eric. So prior to COVID-19, in 2018 and 2019, Richmond was experiencing what I would call a construction boom. But what type of cost increase were you seeing pre-COVID? And did you have any issues securing supplies or subcontractors? Just curious to know kind of what was happening in 2019 before COVID hit. Michael, do you want to start out?
Yeah, sure, of course. First off, thanks for having me, Bill. I really appreciate it. I wanted to correct one thing you stated earlier, though, when you said that an article came out in the end of April saying that lumber prices have increased, $12,900 over per unit. That is probably now up to about $15,000. In the last 2 weeks, the lumber market's just continued to jump. So it's crazy times out there. But back to your question on 2018, 2019, you are correct. It was a hot market, but material prices stayed fairly level. The problem in 2018, 2019 was more labor related, just because there was so much work out there. You really had to keep your finger on labor and getting subcontractors who could man the project, which didn't always result in increase in prices, but schedule slippage and things like that from not having the proper manpower. So I would say 2018, 2019, you typically see a 2 to 3% increase overall on projects, based on some material inflation, et cetera. And then if you hop ahead to now is where you really are seeing, we've probably in the last year had 12 to 15% increase in a project cost, and most of that related to material.
Eric, do you want to share from your perspective as a developer pre-COVID what you were seeing and experiencing?
Yes, we did the two projects with KBS, and they were very similar in size. So it was a good, kind of apples to apples comparison. Both were 166 units. Both were in downtown Richmond. Both had structured parking with 5 to 6 stories of stick built above podium. And we saw prices over kind of a 2-year span from mid 2017 to mid 2019 go up 10 to 12%. So during that time period.
Okay.
And so, Michael could speak more to, whether it was, labor or material cost. It was, obviously a little bit of both. But in 2017, there wasn't a lot being built. And our project, the Penny and Jackson Ward, was one of the first, mid-rise deals in downtown. And we got the benefit of some, pretty good pricing, especially if you look back, in the rearview mirror. We feel really good about that. I think Michael's even commented, you got a pretty good deal on that.
Yep.
So it was a little bit of a, a little sticker shock, a couple years later when it was up, 10, 12%. But the deals were, still working at that point. So.
Okay, so now let's move into March 2020, right? COVID hits, we have shutdowns, things kind of stop, and then things start to reemerge over the summer. What type of, Michael, I'll start with you. What type of, issues did you start having with securing supplies and costs? When did you start to see things and get a sense that things were going to be going up and might be hard to get supplies?
I think we started seeing it probably summer, early fall is when we really started seeing it. Obviously, the spring and early summer were crazy times just because of the pandemic itself, the virus, et cetera. But as y'all know, construction was full speed ahead throughout the pandemic. So I think what you saw in the spring and the first part of the summer was there was a backlog of material that we were kind of chewing through. Then came summer, fall. That's when you started to see the increase in prices, the difficulty in getting material, and I think that was a result of the factories, mills, et cetera, just basically shutting down in March. And you had March, April, May, June with really no material being made, but construction continuing on. And then they slowly started to open the factories and mills, but they opened them at half capacity, et cetera. So, that just resulted in come fall, we were just seeing a scramble for material and trying to get material. Not so much the increase in price yet. It was just more about trying to get the material. And then I think moving into the beginning of this year, we really saw an uptick in the price and material go up. The last 3 months, 4 months. So basically this year, 2021 is when we've had a huge increase in prices. I think the end of last year was just trying to scramble to get the material. And now we're seeing the effects and, just enormous price increases.
So Eric, you were building the Summit on Broad during this time. I had a customer that was doing a multifamily construction project. It was renovation. They told me last fall, they ordered 50 refrigerators. They got 50 different, they couldn't get 50 of the same type, right? They were scrambling to get washers and dryers, and they got mix and match of different stuff. That's just what I heard from a customer. Eric, what was it like trying to, get this, get the Summit through construction, securing supply? Were you asked to, pay higher costs? Give us your month by month view of how things evolve there.
Well, we feel like KBS did a great job of staying ahead of of the supply chain issues. That being said, it took us about 2 months longer to build the Summit than it did the Penny, and they were relatively the same size. And we kind of we attribute that to just delays. Typically, we make up a lot of time during the framing process, and once we get through the concrete, and the weather delays, once we get it under roof, then we're really rolling. And we never picked up any time because there was never a major delay. It was like, hey, the cabinets are a week late. The countertops are a week late. And it was just it was enough of a compounding effect to where, we were 2 months, behind where we had wanted to be. But we still felt good about the fact that we were actually getting it done. Because when COVID first hit, we had no idea if the jobs would be shut down, what was going to happen. So the outcome was really positive, being 2 months delayed. But there was a delay, and it was because of the supply chain, delays, small delays here and there.
So Eric, did you have any cost increases in materials or labor during your construction?
Yes and no. Change orders were very, very painful, right? We didn't have a lot of them, but when you did have a change order, the costs were, really astronomical. And so again, we felt good about the outcome, and we were glad that we didn't have a lot of changes. But that was really the only impact that we felt. I know there were some changes in some taxes, related to some materials, but that kind of, happened right at the tail end of us completing the job. So we felt like we kind of skirted right underneath the real impact of it. So timing wise, we were real happy with how it turned out.
Okay. So now,
Bill, I'd like to just add one thing though to that, and I think what helped that is, once we go under contract with a client, we're contractually bound to kind of honor that price, and I think it helped with Eric that it was the tail end of the project when we were going through the most of the pandemic. But what I will say though is that if you can avoid it, change orders, how Eric hit on it, was change orders, I feel like, are an opportunity for subs to try to make up some of that, material increase that they've lost. Because we in turn will lock in with our subcontractors, and then we expect them to honor that price throughout the course of the job. Contractually, they owe us that. So they really can't come back to us for price increases. They're not, they do. And we in turn don't really do that with Eric. But if there is a change on the drawings, then that kind of opens up a can of worms. For example, if you've got a locked in number for appliances with a sub, and they have to provide the appliances, but the appliances go up through the course of the job, we expect them to honor that price. But if the owner goes and changes all the refrigerators towards the end of the job, that gives them the opportunity to reprice the job with new refrigerators, and you're going to get hit with that increase. So I would recommend limiting the amount of changes in times like this.
Yeah. Okay. So let's turn to right now. Eric, as you're planning, I think at least one new project that I'm aware of that I read in Richmond Biz Sense, you probably have more on the drawing board. Eric, how are you getting comfortable? And you're talking to your contractor, KBS, and pricing a job, and how are you thinking through this right now? This is really, I think, what a lot of real estate developers and our clients are struggling with is, with this uncertainty and this rising cost environment. Don't know if it will come back to normal. How do you plan for new development, knowing that rents probably won't go up as much as lumber has?
We're in a good position right now. It's easy to talk about because we're not in the middle of building a job. So it's a lot easier to talk about when you're just on the front end of that. And so when we built this, when we were designing the summit, we were going back and forth on, whether we should go 12 stories. And we determined that cost-wise, it was too risky for us to spend an extra 15% at the time where interest rates were. And 2 years ago, our biggest risk was the interest rates were starting to run up. And we were worried that, right at the last minute, there'd be a run on interest rates and it could potentially kill the deal, right? So now, 2 years later, the risk has just changed, right? As the developer, we're always trying to manage risk. And interest rate risk is not front and center right now, which is helping, right? So the 10-year treasury is down, 150 to 180 basis points of where it was 2 years ago when we were trying to rate lock, our last job. And at the time, going 12 stories, with an extra 15% from going from wood to light gauge aluminum, was too risky. Whereas now we feel really good that our next project that we're penciling is 12 stories and we're not using wood. And so it's, so it's just the risk is just shifted. And luckily, not luckily, but the interest rates have gone down. And, to the point where it's made up a piece of that gap, right? And so the other gap in pricing is going to have to be mitigated through, most likely, rental increases.
So Michael, as you negotiate with Eric or other customers, and you're not certain what lumber is going to do or steel or concrete, how do you build in, are you building in expected price increases? Walk us through how you're talking with your customers right now.
Well, that's a great question, Bill. And it's difficult. It's been real difficult the last 30 days. I think the key is just communication, just constant communication. Eric and I talk, we just talked last week on his project and where costs are. The elephant in the room is obviously the lumber. The lumber is scary. It's through the roof. Now we've had increases in other areas. So just to name a few, steel, steel's gone up. Drywall is going up. Drywall materials are going up. Anything wood related, cabinets, trim, etc., has gone up. PVC and, just tubs for plumbing, in the last 3 weeks have gone up. Electrical wire, copper, those have all gone up. Now, those have not gone up like lumber has. What's driving this frenzy right now is really lumber. But they've had increases. So, what I'm struggling with is how to advise clients or developers with the lumber. So with the other materials, we're going to have an increase. That's probably a 5 to 7%, overall increase on the project from those materials. But the lumber is the real wild card. So, all I can do is tell them where the lumber is now, where it was, and I can give them my thoughts. So, to give you some history on the lumber, so pre-pandemic, February, March of last year, lumber was under $500 a board foot, and that's kind of how the commodity is priced per board foot. It was under $500 a board foot. It was $300 to $350 at the end of January of last year. Towards the end of this year, as it started to rise, it got up close to $1,000 a board foot, which is crazy. And it is currently this week at $1,600 a board foot. And it's really gone from about $1,100 to $1,600 in the last 30 days. A lot of it is the spring timing and everybody's, doing construction. But it's scary. So over the last 10 years, it hasn't been over $500 a board foot in 10 years. So if you're asking me, I tell owners that, I don't think they can pro forma $1,600 a board foot for lumber right now. If they did that, no jobs would work out. So you got to decide what is a good number. I think $800 to $900 a board foot. If you're 6 to 8 months out in building and needing lumber, is probably realistic. It's got to come down. It can't stay where it is right now, or people are going to stop building things. And I'm seeing that. I'm seeing a couple developers who are putting the brakes on jobs because of this, and that's only going to help get the price down. So all I can do is just communicate with the owners and tell them where the numbers are, and hopefully Eric performs it right. And none of us have a crystal ball, but it's scary out there right now.
Yeah. So Eric, let's talk about rent increases. What historically has the Richmond market, have you seen rent increases, and do you think what do you think is sustainable? Because that's going to impact your decision if you could build something new, given the increasing construction cost.
Well, Michael said, hopefully I get it right? Because most of the risk, is going to be passed, on to the developer, right? The lender, the contractor, kind of will pass most of that risk to the developer. So we do have to get, one thing right we have to get, and that is our rents, right? If we miss our rents by, if rents go down 5% from what we pro forma'd, that's what's going to put us in a bad position. So we have to get that right. And if rents are going up, then we're going to be in a good position, most likely, even if we have some cost overruns and some delays. So to answer your question about Richmond, historically, Richmond's been a 2 to 3%, rent growth market. And that 2 to 3 would be, on the high end. So there are some years where you don't get any rent growth. But last year, we started to see some rent growth, prior to COVID. And the amazing thing during COVID for Richmond is that rents stayed flat, right? So if you kind of compare it to the recession back in 2008, 9, 10, rents went down, 7 to 10%, right? And so when things recovered, it took a couple years to get back to where you were post-recession. Whereas right now, with the rents not having gone down during COVID, and then first quarter of this year seeing a huge spike in demand for apartments in Richmond, things are, we're really encouraged that we're going to see some, that rent growth number is going to be over 5 and potentially as high as 10 this year. I don't know if you have it to put up, but CoStar had a kind of a chart that showed a bar graph on where people are searching for apartments in the first quarter of 2021 versus 2020, and the increase on that. It just showed demand, right? The increase in demand in different markets. And Richmond was number 7 on that list nationally. And so, most of the other markets were, had palm trees in their locations, or they would be, historic high growth markets such as Austin and Atlanta. But it was very unusual to see Richmond and Norfolk kind of in that top 10 nationally, right, for increased demand. And we're attributing that to, COVID, the kind of a migration shift in people from up north of 95, up to 95 corridor, coming down 95. And Richmond is kind of the first stop, because you wouldn't stop in Northern Virginia, right? You wouldn't jump out of the frying pan into the fire. So you're going to keep coming south, and Richmond, is a great place to stop. There's no traffic, a lot of good jobs, but it's also kind of that city feel. with a lot of new development downtown. A lot of great things going on, food scene, brewery scene. So that's what we've been seeing in the first, almost half of this year, is just all these people migrating from up north and stopping in Richmond. And we've seen unprecedented demand for apartments to the point where, this week on 600 unit portfolio, we had 6 vacant apartments.
Oh, that's really good background. Thank you, Eric. Let me ask another question. Michael, are you seeing folks switch from being a wood built to a aluminum or steel built for something that normally would be wood built? Like, at what point?
No, I'm not seeing that yet, Bill. And I get that question a lot. Obviously the metal has gone up, not as much as lumber, but, so studs have increased in price as well. And, the gap is getting closer, but I am not seeing anyone switching from a wood stud to a metal stud. And then, the wood stud is just so much faster schedule wise as well. So
Okay.
we haven't gotten there yet.
Okay.
Maybe if it tops 2,000 a board
Yeah.
foot, maybe then, but.
Gotcha. Let's talk, we've been talking about lumber and material costs. Let's talk about labor costs. Have you seen any labor price increases from your subs?
So that's a great question, Bill. And I think that labor is helping us. I've not seen major labor increases. What I have seen is that, the commercial side of building is basically shut down during COVID and is dried up quite a bit. So I'm seeing a lot of commercial subcontractors make the jump over to multifamily because they need work. So I'm getting a lot of coverage when pricing jobs. And that I think that's helping that, just so that this is not just it is super out of control, but the labor is helping that it's not spiking. And I think some people are also seeing that this could be not a long-term problem, but over the next year, there could be the brakes put on a lot of projects. And because of this, I think some subcontractors are hungry. They want to fill their backlog, so they're going to take some work maybe a little lower than they would have typically. So labor is not really a problem right now.
Okay,
just the
great.
material.
Yeah. And Eric, you talk to bankers frequently and try to figure out what type of financing is available. How are you seeing your lenders respond to rising construction costs?
Well, we're seeing lenders being more comfortable at lower leverage points. That's probably the best way for the lender to manage their risk in this type of environment. Which means, we're, as developers, we're penciling, more equity going into deals. And, and so those return points for equity seem to be getting lower right now. But the equity is hungry. There's a lot of capital out there chasing deals, and they can't buy deals. So they still like development. There's still a lot of equity in play for development. It's just the returns for the equity are getting squeezed a little bit. But they're hoping to make it up on the back end, with rising, costs of rising rents, knowing that we're entering an inflationary period and there could be a nice run on rents in the short term. So.
Okay. Well, my last question is, any tips, advice for the smaller developer? Because you build, in my mind, 100+ size units, 6-7 stories. And Michael, I see your name on a lot of big projects out there in the Richmond area. But for the the smaller contractor or developer, anything you would want to share?
I think for us or on the contracting side, Bill, I would just say that, now more than ever, it's important that you have quality subcontractors, subcontractors that you can rely on, that you know their history, that, what's key now I'm noticing is that we're having to release subcontractors quickly. Get them under contract, direct them to order their material, get it locked in, and you want a subcontractor that can get locked in and buying material. So I think that's more important now than ever, is just having quality subcontractors, getting them released quickly, and just hold on.
Okay, Eric, anything from you on that?
No, I agree with what Michael said. Some of the contractors may be limited in the amount of materials that they're going to be able to purchase over the next 12 months. And so just making sure when you're also selecting contractors that they have the ability to procure the material and lock that in, because the delays will hurt you as much as the cost increases will.
Okay. And Michael, is there any one material that's exceptionally delayed right now? Like, I'll give you an example. I had a customer that was replacing siding on an apartment building, and it was a 3-month delay to get the siding.
Oh, wow. So we're seeing some hardy cementitious board delays. Right now we're struggling with drywall. So drywall is on an allocation with a lot of drywall suppliers. So you're only getting a certain amount, so you really have to schedule it out to make sure you have it scheduled correctly. I'll tell you a story. So on one project, we are experiencing some delays with the HVAC mechanical equipment. So it is a system, a condenser air handler combination, and it's a system is being built in Japan, I believe, and the units are complete and ready to ship, but there are no shipping containers to put it in. We are such and such number in line to get a shipping container to ship it across the ocean on a boat. So they've been sitting there ready, and now they're telling us it won't be till September 1 that they'll have a shipping container available to ship to us. And so we were expecting these units in the next 2 weeks so that we can trim them out, get the units finished and turned over to the owners in July, and now they're saying September before we get the units. So what we're doing is we're exploring an option of renting a cargo ship, having it go over there. I mean, a cargo plane, having it fly over there, put them on the cargo plane, fly it over here. That's going to cost us about $100,000, but it's 200 units worth of units. So it's a lot of revenue for the owner if he can get those units when he thought he was going to get them. So that's kind of an example of something we're running into.
That's very interesting. Okay. I was going to turn into the Q&A from the audience. We have about 108 folks who have joined this webinar. Unless, Eric, Michael, any last minute comments before we turn to Q&A?
I would just say, for the reasons that Michael just mentioned, on new projects, we've gone from underwriting from 20 months to 24 months on all new projects, just to give us more time, because that seems to be what we need the most.
Interesting. Okay, very good. Well, for those that have joined the webinar, if you could type in the Q&A box at the bottom, we have 3 questions there, and I will open that up. Let's see. Has anyone had any success with bulk purchasing for lumber or other materials?
Well, we bulk purchase all of our lumber for the entire project at one time. I'm assuming maybe they mean bulk and purchase, multiple projects. But, one of the issues now is actually just getting the material. So just for one project, 150, 200 unit project, they are telling us that they need 4 months advance notice to gather all the material. So that means, if you think you'll be framing in August, you need to be releasing the material now. So that's a hurdle now, is just getting the material as well for the lumber, because the mills are just, I guess short-staffed and not catching up with, where they got behind last year. So, that's one of the issues, is just being able to get it for one job.
All right, so here's another question and some background. VCC does a fair amount of affordable housing lending, and so rents are kind of fixed for low-income housing tax credit based on income levels. And I know, Eric, you don't develop in that world. I don't know if, Michael, you build in the low-income housing tax credit world, but if rents are kind of fixed and with rising construction costs, have you seen anybody come up with any creative solutions to kind of bridge the gap there? Mike, I'm not sure if you build for customers that are building the low-income housing tax credit properties or not. It's probably a question to be more focused in your area. If you have, if you don't, we can go on to the next.
Yeah, I'm not building many right now.
Okay.
So I can't really comment on that.
Okay. Another question is, any experiences with city inspections? I know it's been slow normally, but any impacts from COVID?
Well, yeah, we had a lot. I will say that now I think most of them have subsided, but we did have quite a few delays during the height of the pandemic last year. The city of Richmond was working from home, so we had multiple delays. We had delays on the the front end of the projects, with the intake, with the plan reviews, with all that kind of stuff. I think with the city kind of shut down, city of Richmond, I'm saying, kind of was shut down for a period, and then working from home, there might have been some confusion. So we had delays there. And then with inspections, we had delays as well, with inspectors either being out because, one of them had COVID or they knew someone. So, the whole department was quarantining. We ran into that quite a few times. And then we ran into a period where the inspectors were not coming on the site, which was interesting. So we did a handful of inspections through FaceTime, which we loved. You can show the inspector exactly what you want them to see and nothing else. So that we had that happen a couple times last year. So most of that has calmed down now, and they've got control of it. And but the city of Richmond inspections in general has been a slow process even before the pandemic. So that's been a topic of conversation with the city and developers for probably 5 years now, and they've made some changes. And Eric could maybe speak more on this, but a couple changes they've made is in the intake. I think they will now allow third parties to start reviewing plans, which is a big deal because, PODs, building permits, et cetera, were 6-9 months out. And then on the inspection portion of it, they are also allowing third-party inspections. And they've come up with a nice process. They've come up with a short-term process, meaning if you call in for an inspection, an inspector doesn't show up within 24 hours, you can call in a third party to make that inspection. You have to give notice to one of the officials, David Alley, there, that you're going to do that, but you can do that on the short term. And now they've also are allowing you to do the entire building, like the entire electrical, every inspection in it, third party from the start. So that's been huge. They've just started that. So I'm doing that on 2 projects now, and that's helped out a lot.
We use that at Summit, the third party trade inspections, and that was a saving grace for us on our Summit job because that was right when the city was shut down, and luckily they had approved those third party inspectors. We haven't experienced a third party plan reviewer. To our knowledge, there's only one person in the city currently that can review plans and approve them. So if that is the case, then that's great information. So we're not aware of it.
Another question, Michael, is have you seen a cost increase in brick?
Not really. So 2 or 3 trades that have stayed pretty steady throughout the course of the year is masonry. Concrete, we have had some increases in rebar for concrete, but you know, the like I mentioned, the labor, the hungriness of some concrete subs and some commercial jobs dropping off have helped offset the rebar cost. So concrete's held pretty steady, and site work is held pretty steady. So those three have held pretty steady. You know, people have joked that you know, maybe we just build an all CMU, you know, masonry building instead of wood framing. And again, we're not there yet. I think if prices continue to go up in you know, wood framing, that maybe we entertain that, but we're not there yet. And again, I think that these lumber prices are have got to come down. I mean, they cannot stay where they are. I think this is a scary time right now, but they have, you know, they are 3-4 times, like you mentioned, over what they were a year ago. And that's just, you can't build like that. So something's got to break.
Another question. This is about the quality of wood. Have you had any issues with the quality of wood that you're able to secure now?
I have not.
Okay.
I have not seen any quality issues with it. I did hear, you know, you hear all these different rumors as to why the lumber is up, you know, and I really do think it's just a supply and demand. And I think, you know, since we cut down on supply so bad during the beginning of the COVID, when we had those factories shut down. And as I mentioned earlier, construction did not shut down. We continued to roll. And I think you're just seeing the effects of that right now. But, you know, I heard, you know, a month ago that there was a infestation of, you know, some type of bug in some country that made it, you know, the spike in lumber. So I've heard all kinds of stuff. But when it gets to the site, I have not personally seen any effects or any, you know, lower grade.
So Eric and Michael, another question is, this is about global supply chains. Does it inform your decision about what type of material you can secure in America, like the HVAC units made in Japan? Now, as you rethink buying equipment made in the United States, has that altered thinking, planning for materials in the projects, where it's coming from?
You know, unfortunately, you know, I don't make a lot of those decisions. You know, a lot of that stuff is architect driven and design driven, and we basically just buy, you know, what's on the plans. But obviously, it's in the back of my mind that maybe we can, you know, get some local stuff. I will tell you that, you know, even local, you know, United States items, cabinets are just a, you know, most of them are made here. A lot of them, you know, Texas, et cetera. And that is just, that's been a major delay, is getting cabinets here. And again, that's just because of the mills and the manufacturing facilities were shut down and then cranking them back up. And then they had to go 6 months at you know, half capacity, and they couldn't put out. So it's not only overseas, it's local stuff that we're having a hard time getting as well.
Okay. Eric, is it informing a supply chain, where it's coming from, informing any of your decisions as to what materials you use, or appliances or equipment?
Absolutely. Yeah. So yeah, when we're picking those type of items that are big dollar items, we definitely are asking, besides, you know, how much is, you know, can we get it? And, you know, are there delays? Now, again, there could be, it could be easy to get right now, and then 6 months down the road when you actually need them, there might be some delays, but you know, we are trying to forward think with that in mind.
Okay. All right. Here's another question. It's kind of a crystal ball question. Do you think it's reasonable to pause a project if it is significantly impacted by lumber costs? If so, when do you foresee being feasible to start that project again?
I guess it depends if you've, you know, if you've broken ground or not.
Yeah.
Because, you know, time is money, and, you know, if you've already broken ground, you can't really stop.
Yeah. And your construction lender is not going to want, you know, as you're clicking away interest and the construction lender starts to get nervous about, is this project ever going to get built and when will it come back on, be finished? Another question is, can you use futures contract to make bulk purchases of any materials in the market right now, Michael? Is that even possible?
I have not done that or had any luck with that.
Okay.
So I have not.
Okay, all right.
One other thing, Bill, we talked about kind of, hopefully that, some of the contractors are going to be hungry, assuming there's some jobs that have been, that get paused, right, or set to the side for a little bit. The one impact that I don't think that we've felt yet is the developers kind of putting down their pencils for 12 months. And I think that we're just now, so as an example, the project that we hope to start, in January, we should have started, right now, right? Mm-hmm. And so there's a lot of jobs that should be starting right now that normally would have been starting right now that are not because of COVID. And I think we're just kind of getting into that kind of window, and maybe Michael can, speak to that, but I don't think we've really felt that impact yet.
Okay. All right.
Yeah, I would agree with that, Eric. And I think that kind of goes with, maybe some of the labor and the subs being a little hungrier because they see that the work is not as plentiful as it was, a year, even 2 years ago, and then Eric, you've mentioned before on the flip side of that is just the amount of apartments becoming, coming available is obviously right now is high because most of the projects were pre-pandemic when they started, but due to the lull in the last year and maybe jobs starting up, that potentially in 2 years from now we could see a drop in supply, right, of apartments that are available.
Yeah, I think I think that lull is 12 months from now, where everything that's almost done is finished, and you look around the city, and if you just kind of gauge by where they are in the construction process, there's a lot of jobs that are not 12 months away from delivering. They're just being started right now. So I think next summer you're going to see rents run up this summer, and I think you're going to see rents run up next summer before that supply can get to it. So.
Sure. And we were just touching on this, Michael. Have you had any customers sign a construction contract now with these high lumber prices, or are people going to say, "Hey, I want to wait 90 days," or just give me maybe share some more recent discussions you've had with folks that are contemplating starting a project or.
Well, I have a hard time advising anyone to lock in on lumber prices where they are today for a job that it hasn't even started yet. I have had 2 jobs we have gone under contract and executed contracts in the last 30 days, and they bought the lumber where it was that day, and it was high. But the owners needed to get the job going, so they went. What I've also done, and this kind of goes back to your question, and what can smaller contractors or just any contractors in general do to help themselves protect themselves, is also working with good developers, good clients that will treat you well and you have a good relationship with, which KBS does. And most of our projects are negotiated repeat clients like Eric himself. So I have executed 4 contracts in the last 30 days where we have carried an allowance for the lumber. So, how we came to that was, lumber pricing is $1,500 a board foot. And, I got to tell the owner, I would not buy it at this. It can't stay here. Now, of course, I don't have a crystal ball. I don't know. It could go up to 200, 2,000. And then I look like I don't know. But I can't advise them to buy it now. But again, I don't think it's going to go down to $500 a board foot where it was a year ago. But, so we split the middle. We call it 1,000, and I figure out what the lumber's worth at $1,000 a board foot, and we carry that as an allowance. So, that way he gets a contract locked, gets a contract and can get started, but you've got that risk of the lumber out there. So, that's what I've done, a handful of times in the last 30 days.
Okay. And Michael, you had mentioned that in drywall supply, there's a little bit of a supply issue. Is drywall mostly made in the United States now, or do we import a fair share?
Both, and we import a lot and a lot is made here. So I'd say a little bit of both. I'll give you another example of something that is becoming hard to get, and that's tubs. Fiberglass, all-in-one tubs for some reason are hard to get. So I've got 2 projects. So this is kind of stuff we're doing. I've got 2 projects that are in the early stages. We are just starting, site work, and we'll start concrete here shortly, but we won't need tubs for probably 5 or 6 months, but we are purchasing all the tubs. So one of the projects is 198 units. We are purchasing all the tubs right now. And we have we've worked with the owner. Again, it's an owner that we have a relationship with, a great owner, and he has an empty warehouse on South Side, and he is allowing us to store all of the tubs in that warehouse. So we're doing that. So that's just an example of something we're doing. But tubs, I don't know why, but tubs are becoming hard to come by right now.
Okay, very good. Well, I think that wraps up the questions. If anybody wants, we've got about a few minutes left here. We're going to end it soon, or before 1 o'clock or 1 o'clock, if we have any more questions. All right. Well, I think that's the end of the questions. I just want to thank Eric and Michael for your time today, sharing your insight, your experience. It's been a pleasure to kind of hear what's going on. And for those that are on the webinar, you can learn more about Virginia Community Capital and see our just released 2020 impact report at our website, which is vacommunitycapital.org. You can find my contact information on the website. Eric, Michael, do you want to share any last parting thoughts here before we wrap up?
Well, I just want to say thanks for having me, Bill. And I hope I wasn't all doom and gloom. It's the pricing right now is crazy. And, hopefully, Eric, he's got all the good stuff with the rising rents and low interest rates. And I'm stuck dealing with the prices.
Well, Bill, thanks for having me, and thanks to Michael. You ask how you get deals done and going forward, and you get deals done with people that you've done business with. And that's, people, like, Virginia, groups like Virginia Community Capital and KBS. And, we're fortunate to have, people that we've done business before and had success with. And, it's a lot easier to take a little bit more risk with groups like that, because how they're going to react when things don't go well. Hopefully, again, we get some benefit of a low interest rate environment and some rising rents here in the short term. I'm talking about here in the next 6 months. So that will help.
Well, great. Well, again, thank you so much for spending your afternoon with us and sharing all this with the participants. And we thank everyone who joined the webinar today. And you'll have a nice afternoon. Thanks again.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.